Hey, you guys, it's Into the Stars, and welcome to the mystery of the out of place rabbit. By now, you probably have understood that the rabbit symbolizes something that has to do with the Illuminati. We see rabbits out of place everywhere in our consciousness. We see it in music videos, we see it in movies. We just did a music video on The Good Die Young, and there was a rabbit in that scene under the blankets with the child next to a moon. We also see rabbits in I Pet Goat. We see rabbits everywhere in videos and movies. And this video is meant to assist us in deciphering what it is this rabbit means. Curiously, there's very little information when you do a Google search on Illuminati and rabbits, yet we know that they use this as a famous symbol. And so what we're going to do here is do our own research on the rabbit and what in fact it means. So I started my rabbit hole journey here at the Easter Bunny Wikipedia webpage, and I started reading through here, and it talks about a little bit of the history of the Easter Bunny. Now, obviously this is the prepackaged version of what we were supposed to believe, but it revealed some interesting points here. It talks about Hare sometimes occurring in illuminated manuscripts in northern Europe here. We also see these three hares or bunny rabbits in a circle here in Germany, which is where they're saying that a lot of this rabbit imagery actually stemmed from. We also see and now remember this image here with the three rabbits in this top of this window here, because we're going to come back to that in a little bit. But it talks a little bit about the history of the rabbit and why we color eggs. It talks about the color of blood in recognition of the blood of the sacrificed Christ, okay? And that rabbits are seen as fertility symbols because they can actually be pregnant with their next brood before they give birth to the one that they have. Okay, now that took me to another website, and that was this one. This is a much more comprehensive explanation of the rabbit. The Easter Bunny is a symbol of Easter for two reasons. European spring goddess Oster, from which the name Easter comes, had the head of a hare. The date of Easter is determined by the moon, whose symbolism is strongly tied to that of the hare. So it's interesting that we saw a moon next to a rabbit in the video The Good Die Young. Okay, it's tied to the moon. Now it talks about the Council of Nicaea. Okay, this is a very important date here. Easter had been celebrated on the first Sunday following the first full moon of March. So Easter is celebrated based on the moon. Okay. Now, they talk about hare hunting was once a common Easter activity in England. Remember that. By the time we get done with this analysis and explanation, you will probably come to your own conclusions on what the Easter Bunny means and why the Illuminati use it as a favorite symbol. But remember this about them hunting the Easter Bunny. Okay? Now, many parts of the world, Easter heralds spring as well as the resurrection of Christ. The nocturnal rabbit, signifying the moon, who dies every morning and is resurrected every evening, also represents the rebirth of nature in spring. Both the moon and the rabbit were believed to die in order to be reborn. Therefore, the hare is a symbol of immortality. Now, this is where it gets interesting. In Egypt, Osiris, god of the dead, was sacrificed to the Nile each year in the form of a hare to guarantee the annual flooding Egyptian agriculture depended on. So, sacrifice of the hare. Okay? Now, who is Osiris? Osiris was the wife of Isis. Okay? Osiris was the wife Isis. Okay? Now, I'm reading Alice in Wonderland, the wiki article, and I see that the whole story stemmed from three children. We saw the three rabbits, remember, going down a river. Well, what do you think the name of the river was? It was called the Isis River. And this is the story from which Alice in Wonderland stemmed. Now, I tried to get a hold of, this story and kind of read through it, but it's very cryptic and very hard to follow. But here's the reference here. Isis and three young daughters of Henry. This is where the story came from. They're going up a river, okay? So, obviously, Alice in Wonderland has pharaonic roots from the pharaohs and from Egypt. And those roots, of course, as we've covered on previous videos, go back to the Nephilim and the secrets that they taught men. Some of those secrets being the ability to create the pyramids. Okay? So, back to the story. Although the hare is not a symbol for Christ, some analogy might be made to Christ, who was sacrificed in the form of a man for the feeding of God's people. Now, think about that statement, okay? It's not Christ, but they're saying that it's an analogy. What kind of analogy? A negative analogy, in my opinion. And the picture is probably starting to form itself in your consciousness too, that this was a knock on Christ's sacrifice. I'm going to show you much more information to prove that as well. Now it's saying here that in a legend, the shadow of the moon's surface was believed to be rabbits. And hares are thought to be moon's lovers or brothers. Talks about Chinese superstition, gazing at the moon. Now, talks here about rabbits are much more common than hares in the New World than in the Old, and vice versa. At the time of Christ, there were no rabbits in Israel, but the child Jesus most likely saw many hares as he was growing up. Nevertheless, there is a legend about a young rabbit who for 3 days waited anxiously for his friend Jesus to return to the Garden of Gethsemane, little knowing what had become of him. Early on Easter morning, Jesus returned to his favorite garden and was welcomed by his animal friend. That evening, when Jesus' disciples came to the garden to pray, they discovered a path of beautiful larkspurs, each blossom bearing the image of a rabbit in its center as a remembrance of the patience and hope of this faithful little creature. The Buddhist, the hare is a symbol of self-sacrifice. Okay? Now this goes on and on with the pagan roots of the rabbit. Okay? But this is what I want to address at this point. I thought to myself, okay, obviously we have Illuminati roots. So I did some investigation and I found this artwork here. Zoom it out a little bit so you guys can see it. And this is obvious Illuminati imagery here. Okay? We have the pillars of Boaz. We have the pillars of Boaz, and we have an obvious rabbit here. The all-seeing eye atop it. Okay? With the black and white checkers all around it. So then I thought to myself, I typed in 322 and rabbit, and something amazing popped up. It was this video. This is a band called the Frightened Rabbit, okay? And they performed in Milwaukee on March 22nd, 322. Now, that sort of, alarmed me a bit, but I thought, okay, there's got to be more to that. I can't just say they're Illuminati because they performed on March 22nd. But as you know with truth, sometimes you know it, but you just have to prove it. So I want you to watch this segment of the video here. I want you to tell me what you see. As you see here, the camera pans away, and we have what looks like the three hares on the ceiling and the lights. But watch this. And there's our pyramid in the background, illuminated behind the Frightened Rabbits band. Apparently this band has some popularity. Okay, but that's not all. So I did a search on 322, the Frightened Rabbit, which is the name of the band. And they actually performed at 322 West Armitage Avenue in Chicago, Illinois. Okay, so we have an address that matches the 322 as well. That's no accident. This was on August 3rd. So then I thought, okay, is there any relation to Jesus? And I found this video. It's a movie trailer, the very first one that is somewhat obscure, of the Passion of the Christ. And it has almost 100,000 views. And in the description, we see the person who posted this. People had asked him what the background music was, and he said that it was from Rabbit Proof Fence movie. And that will be our next rabbit hole journey, to watch this movie and see if there are any more clues. But obviously there is a connection to what is going on here. Take care and be safe, you guys.